This is Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast where we bring Jesus into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. I am Jason. So glad you're tuning in to Sports Spectrum today. Make sure you check out the website, sportspectrum.com, for all of the content here at the Ministry of Sports Spectrum with podcasts and articles and daily devotionals. Tons of content all available at the website, sportspectrum.com. And of course, your stories, your guest ideas, your feedback. We welcome it. We want to hear from you. You can reach us. Jason@sportspectrum.com is my email address. Jason@sportspectrum.com. A lot of the guests that we have on this show come from you guys, your readers, the listeners, the viewers, you, the Sports Spectrum fans. We love you guys, and we're so grateful that you listen, that you tune in, and that you reach out for the guest ideas and the show ideas that you have. So you can email me, jason@sportspectrum.com. And we want to say thanks to our sponsors and partners today, fillthestadium.com. That's the website, and Compassion International is the partner that we are so grateful to have here with us at Sports Spectrum. More powerful than poverty. That's what Compassion is about, helping children in crisis and releasing them from poverty. COVID-19, we know this, has affected so many people. Well, it's affected 70,000 kids right now who are in desperate need of help around the world, who are not going to get sponsored or might not have gotten sponsored because of the pandemic, canceling most of the events that Compassion International relies on to sponsor these kids. So that's 70,000 kids in desperate need of help right now. And Compassion is doing something about it, along with our pro athlete friends, helping to fill the stadium and teaming up to stand in the gap for these 70,000 kids who are stuck in poverty in a very desperate and dangerous situation right now. You can get involved by checking out the website, fillthestadium.com. Fillthestadium.com. You can click Give Now, and you can help release these kids from poverty. It's a stadium that can't remain empty. It really is. So go check out fillthestadium.com. We're also presented by our friends at Water Mission, a Christian engineering ministry that fights the global water crisis with safe water, sanitation, and hygiene solutions in developing countries and disaster areas. They've served more than 5 million people in 56 countries fighting the global water crisis. You can check out their website, watermission.org, to learn more, to pray with them, and to donate. Can you believe that 4.4 billion people lack adequate sanitation, access to adequate sanitation? 2.1 billion people lack access to safe water. Those numbers are enormous and shocking when I read them. But Water Mission is doing something about it. Go check them out at watermission.org, fighting the global water crisis, watermission.org. Today on Sports Spectrum, we welcome Ben Higgins to the show. Ben is best known for his appearance on season 20 of ABC's hit series, The Bachelor. And Ben is also a newly minted author. His new book, Alone in Plain Sight, Searching for Connection When You're Seen But Not Known, releases February 2nd, 2021. Now, Ben's a big sports guy. Growing up, football was his sport. He also grew up in Indiana, so basketball, of course, was practically in his blood, like it is for every Hoosier that's raised in the state of Indiana. So we talked some sports here with Ben. He had a really significant injury that shook his identity to the core and really helped him realize that it was something bigger planned for Ben Higgins' life than just playing sports. And of course, Ben is a follower of Jesus. That's why he's on this show. And we talk about how his relationship with the Lord has evolved and grown and continues to be one that he wrestles with even to today. Ben's a great guy who's got a great heart to serve. He and his business partners, Riley and Drew, founded Generous Coffee, which is a Denver-based roasted coffee business. And he dedicates and contributes profits to social issues around the world based upon this Generous Coffee initiative. So he's got a lot of cool things going on. Ben Higgins from The Bachelor. He's our guest today, talking about his new book, talking about Indiana sports and more. Ben Higgins joins us here on Sports Spectrum. Take a listen. Ben Higgins, you're now an author, my friend. Welcome to Sports Spectrum. How are you?
That's fun. I like you saying that. That feels good. Hey, thanks for having me. Pumped to be here.
This will be good. Congrats on the book. Let's talk about that. Start us off with that and this new book, Alone in Plain Sight. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. And not even for the sake of this interview, but it's true. So this book really, I think it started getting written my junior year of high school. So I was starting the process of looking at colleges to play football at, really starting to get intrigued with the idea of it. First play of my second game, my junior year, rolled out, got hit in the knees, blew my knee out completely. And at that moment, I knew, it was actually my first thought on the sidelines, that everything I'd ever done, my identity was getting changed. Like in a second, everything was done. And it's scary, man. It's scary. I see high school kids today, college students, pros who get hurt and their life is switched upside down in a moment. And it's really scary at the time. But looking back now, I'm 31. It's the best. It honestly was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it allowed me to start to form an identity, not around sports and a label, but around who I am my friends, how I treat others, what I want to do as a legacy. And so Alone in Plain Sight was really something that I felt most of my life, because I felt like, hey, I had everything that I ever dreamed of. As an athlete, I became pretty tall. I'm 6'4", thought I had everything working out for me. And yet I still felt disconnected, unsure of who I was, unsure of who other people were, unsure of how God seed me and I questioned all of this. And it really, even up until today, I questioned this. And I realized that as I talk about that more and more people feel that way. And I wanted to write this book to connect and be a book for those who feel like the outsider looking in, and let those people know that they're not outsiders. In fact, if we're all feeling like that, that actually connects us in a way that brings us together.
That's pretty cool. Again, it's releasing February 2nd. It's called Alone in Plain Sight, searching for connection when you're seen but not known. And you're writing this book, I have to imagine, when the pandemic hits, right? How did this all come about?
Yeah, so 2 years ago, I started writing it. And about 8 months ago, let's say, I realized I had a timeline that I had to get pumping on. And so I started writing it more and more. Well, I was actually on tour hosting a show for Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
We were traveling the country at that point. And so I was writing it from the back of a tour bus. And then COVID hit. And I went back to Indiana to quarantine and hang out there. And it was actually, I think, a really great thing to have quarantine happen for me. And not because of the damage I know it caused and the lives that were lost and the people that were hurt from it. But for me personally, when it comes to the book, quarantine was great because it allowed me to step away, have something to do. And I wrote all day, every day. And it allowed me to get the book done on time, but also I think allowed me to pull a little deeper. Like when COVID hits, it's scary. People were freaking out. Things were changing. And so it allowed me to pull a little deeper into myself and write at a depth that I don't think I could have without something happening like COVID.
Right. And COVID has forced us all to isolate in some ways and quarantine, like you said. So I can't imagine a book being a little bit more timely than right now, because so many of us, especially the younger people who might not have families like I do, being stuck at home, being alone, and sort of that alone in plain sight and kind of turning to social media or wherever they're turning to feel like they're part of something. This seems like a timely book for that person.
Yeah, it wasn't part of the plan.
That's right.
I couldn't have predicted this, but I'm hoping it is. I'm hoping that this book can do a couple things. One, it humbles us all enough to know that we're a little messed up. It allows us to care a little bit more about our own stories and the stories of others. And it allows us to look at our life and the lives of others for the things that are hurting us the most, that are disconnecting us the most, and the things that are separating us the most, and confront those things, with the hope that at the end of the book, or that at some point in life, we can feel loved and connected and purpose-filled, because we are. That's the truth of my life that I live within, that I believe, because of my faith, that we do have a purpose, that we do have value. And even if you don't share the same belief as me, I still hope you feel that, because I believe that that's not only helpful, it's true.
Yeah. Ben Higgins is joining us here on Sports Spectrum. You talk early in the book about your parents and what they meant to you and how they went through it just for you to be born, right? There was a lot that they went through. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, definitely. So my dad had cancer when he was 30. My mom was pregnant when he had cancer, and so they had worked and tried for 7 years to have me. And one of the things that as I get older and I'm engaged now, and I start thinking about family and hear my friends have kids, getting pregnant, starting a family is not a promised gift, and it is really hard.
That's right.
There's a lot of hard things. My parents went through it. And so when he had cancer, she was pregnant with me. Well, ended up getting super sick and being bedridden for about 6 months of their pregnancy. And so they actually shared a hospital room together as he was going through chemo and she was dealing with her hemorrhage. And for me to even get here meant they both kind of, in a sense, sacrificed their lives. Which allowed us to, I'm an only child because of a lot of these things. They could have another kid. And so it allowed us to connect on a deeper level. I think there was just a value, a gratitude, appreciation for life that I felt from them that, was kind of intrinsically given to me that, hey, this life is a gift and I don't know what to do with it, but I want to try my best to do something right with it. And also as parents, like they made sure I never felt unloved or unwelcomed, which was interesting considering one of my biggest insecurities that I am unwelcomed and sometimes unloved. But within my own household, I never felt that way, which allowed me a safe haven to start having these thoughts and to start trying to heal because I knew if we do life well with each other, I knew what it could feel like. And I wanted to try to be a part of helping us all feel more loved and connected and not hurting.
Yeah, that's good. My wife and I both went through it a little bit too, trying to have children. We have a daughter. She's an only child in a similar vein to what your parents went through having you. So I related to that really well in understanding how precious it really is, even because there are people who, families as well as I do, I'm sure, that have 5, 6, 7 kids. And they're just like, okay, it's another year, another baby. And you realize that's not how it works for everybody. It really is precious and a blessing when you are able to have it. And I think it helps appreciate more. Did you have any sense of that growing up as an only child? Or are you just like a typical child, like, whatever, I'm just one of these kids, just like everybody else? Or did you have a sense that there was something a little bit, I don't want to say more special, but the fact that you were really wanted and they tried so hard to have you?
Yeah, I did feel it. I did. The one weird thing was I was never spoiled. My friends would tell you that. My parents really tried hard not to spoil me. But I felt it in the way that they talked to me, in the way they supported me, in the way they guided me, in the way they disciplined me. I felt this desire for, like, I felt their desire for me to be a healthy part of the family, to be connected to them, to be a benefit to society, to appreciate our God above. I felt that always. And I know that, like, I grew up knowing that if I could do those things, if I could live within the idea that life is a gift, that it's valuable, that it's something to be grateful for, then I was doing something right. And so, yes, I always felt that. But I never felt more special than anybody else. And I think that's part of it. I read about in the book, my parents, because of, sorry, can you hear that?
I can't. No, you're good. Okay. And I can edit what you just said out, so it's fine.
Okay. It's the dump truck coming by my house.
Oh, good. Go ahead.
But I felt that because they wanted me to feel so valued and loved, but they also didn't want me to feel like I was any greater than anybody else or any more special than anybody else, that they really tried hard not to infuse in me any lies. They didn't tell me I was going to be president of the world. They didn't tell me I was going to be a professional athlete. They didn't tell me that I was gone to change the world. They told me I could take care of the things that are around me, the world that I was living in, to be focused on the present moment. And it stuck with me today. And I'm glad they did, because I believe those things, sometimes your parents tell you things, you get older and you're like, that wasn't true. Yeah. Those things are still true today.
That's interesting too, because you mentioned Indiana. That's where you grew up. You're an Indiana boy. So you mentioned football and a poignant moment of trying to play the sport of football, but I have to imagine basketball is in your blood too, right? Being an Indiana boy.
Oh yeah. Yes, 100%. Basketball is actually kind of the main focus of my childhood up until high school. And unfortunately, football season comes before basketball season. So I lost 2 years of it once the knee injury happened. So I never finished playing basketball, but it was my main sport. I mean, it's what I grew up loving and doing. It's my summers. My summers were AAU and basketball camps and, going to play in the park. And so when those, I mean, and I know we talk about, the golden years of high school sports and people laugh, but I only say this because it's such a big part of my story that in one moment have it taken away and have to, as a junior, go, oh no, what's next? Like, I'm not the smartest kid. I don't know what I'm going to do with this life. Like, I don't have any plans to just go to college and study. Like, that's not me. And when that's taken away from you, you have to really start to refocus who you are and what you're doing and what benefit you are going to be to the world.
So give me a favorite sports memory, an Indiana sports memory for you as a kid, or maybe you went to college at Indiana as well, right? So what's a sports memory of yours that sticks out?
Yeah, well, my AAU basketball team was really good. I played for a team called Indiana Elite. And most of those guys went on to play Division I basketball. I think maybe all of them except me, which is, again, pretty humbling. But a couple of them went on to play pros. Well, because of our relationship and my relationship with the coaches down at IU, I lived with three of the players in college. So I became like their lazy roommate who they would go off and go to practice. I would stay home and eat pizza and just kind of hang out and get bigger while they got more athletic. And but we were really bad at IU. So that was the year that there was a coaching change. I think we won maybe 4 or 5 games my freshman year. When it became my junior year, I believe, is when we beat Kentucky on the Wofford last second shot. And it was cool to see because if you didn't go to IU, you'd watch that game and go, what a cool sports memory. Like, what a great shot. What an amazing game. But when you went to IU and you lived with the guys, you realize what it takes to lose over and over again, to be the worst team on the court over and over again, to work every day, to give up your summers at home with your family, to give up the nights going out. You see them working so hard. And so when that shot goes in and we beat number 1 Kentucky on our floor, anybody that went to IU at the time or any fan of IU knew this was something special because it gave everybody this sense of like, we can be better. That's my favorite memory because I just remember sitting in the stands crying because my best friends were on the floor getting lifted up high. So and cool. I was just, again, the weird roommate, but I was there and I celebrated it.
Yeah, and those were your guys. Like you said, you watch them and what it takes, even on a Division I level, because when you get to the NBA, it's a much different level. But even in college, it takes a lot. These guys work so hard just to get on the court. And when you can have that pay off, it's got to be a pretty cool thing to see.
It's awesome. It's just, that's a sports memory. And what's weird for me, man? It's weird for me to think back on my favorite sports memory and it not be about me. It's one of the things about the books. Book is interesting is, I would love at 31 to be able to sit here and have an interview with you and talk about, this is my favorite sports memory when I did this or the game that, I led the team down the field.
Sure.
It's humbling for me to look back on my sports career and know that like those things were all great. I have great memories from sports, but the coolest one is one that I celebrated the team I cheered for.
Yeah.
And that's part of this transition that I've done over, the last 10 years of my life is realizing that this thing isn't always about me, that this life isn't about me. Sports taught me that. It taught me that, being an athlete is great, but it's not the end all be all, that we still have to be humans and still have to be people who love others.
Quick break to tell you a little bit more about Compassion International and the Fill the Stadium initiative. There are kids around the world right now because of COVID-19 who are living in poverty, and the issue of food has gone from being hungry to starvation. The pandemic has magnified their needs, and they are truly in crisis. And so we've been called, I believe, at Sports Spectrum to work with Compassion to help bring an end to this poverty. And that's why we're partnering with Compassion, helping kids in poverty all around the world, meeting their basic needs like food, clean water, and education so they can not only survive, but reach their full potential. And last year, this past spring, most of the events that Compassion International relies on to help sponsor these children in crisis were canceled due to the pandemic. And that's left 70,000 kids in desperate need of help. 70,000 also happens to be the average size of many pro football stadiums that were once filled and now sit mostly empty. Each of the 70,000 empty seats represents a child in crisis who needs your help, who needs our help to step up and fill the stadium. Now think about this. The cost of a couple tickets to a game, food and drinks that many cannot attend, that's what it's going to take to help a kid out for an entire year. So you can go to the website, fillthestadium.com right now, fillthestadium.com, and team up with Compassion to help these kids in crisis. This is a stadium that cannot remain empty. So check out the website again, fillthestadium.com, donate, pray, and thank you so much for helping us out with Compassion International. Fillthestadium.com. Ben Higgins is joining us here on Sports Spectrum. The new book, again, is called Alone in Plain Sight. It releases February 2nd, 2021. So let's intersect the conversation with faith a little bit, your faith journey, and maybe take us to the moment when you said yes to Christ and that kind of faith in the Lord became yours and yours alone.
Yeah, so grew up in a Christian household. In fact, Warsaw, Indiana, where I grew up, was at one point the Methodist capital of the world. It is a very Christian town. And so I kind of grew up with the understanding that everybody was Christian, that the world was Christian.
Right.
Obviously, that changes when you get to college. You start seeing people believing other things, people that you love and like. People have great intentions, great values, great morals that just don't agree with you and don't see the world the same way you do. And so you start to, just like any other person, you start to process what your worldview is going to be when it's separated from your family and from what you know. And so I describe my faith walk as like a wrestling with God often, still to this day. I threw all my eggs in the basket of Jesus because when I read who Jesus was, how he treated others growing up, there's something unique and special about the way he saw people. And then as my dad, when he was in his early 40s, had a heart attack that should have killed him. I remember going back home and just praying to God, and this doesn't happen very often in my life. I don't want it to come off like this, but praying to God, if you're there, if you're real, I just need to know that. Please show up. Like, you don't have to heal my dad. I don't know if I'm going to even ask for that. I don't know if that's right. But I just need you to show up because I cannot be alone in this. And every time I've prayed that prayer from a place of desperation, God's shown up in big ways. That I believe I can at times hear the audible voice of God. And that's why I said I don't want to claim that this happens often, but sure. It's happened. And so when I pray to Jesus and I can feel, sense, and hear the presence of God around me, it's impossible to doubt to a level of non-belief. And it was those moments in my life that I finally said, probably my sophomore year of college, is like, if this Jesus thing isn't real, I have nothing left. And so I'm giving my life up to this God, because if God is not there, I don't have value. I don't have purpose. I don't know how I see others having value or purpose. This whole thing's one big mess, and I just cannot believe this whole thing's one big mess. So I'm going to believe in God. I'm going to try to do my best to love God and love others. And that happened my sophomore year, and it happened, and it's not pretty, man. It's ugly a lot of times. It's still a wrestling with God often. It's still confusion and doubt and questioning. But my relationship with God has grown through those confusions and doubts and wrestling, and God still continued to show up.
Yeah, and then God opens up these doors, and you're on The Bachelor, and your profile is beginning to rise, and people start knowing who you are, and you're gaining followers on social media, and everything's kind of rising to the surface here. And I have to imagine there was some push-pull and some challenges in being a Christian and being a man of faith, and kind of stepping into the doors that God was opening for you that ended up being doors where everybody was knowing who you were. How do you think you handled that time when, I hate to use the word famous, but that's what it is, where you become this known person to a lot of people?
Well, I don't think I would have handled it well. I think I know what I would have done. But I called my buddies, because at first, when you do start to become famous and your picture's on the side of a building in Times Square and magazines are writing about you, it feels really good. And you start to really love it. And you start to really want more of it. And you start to act like you deserve it. It's funny how quickly you can start to act like you deserve it. One of my buddies told me, as I was telling him this, and he's like, how are you holding up? I was like, I feel like I'm holding up well, but I feel like I'm doing too well. Like, I feel like I'm liking this too much, and maybe that's not right. Or maybe that's right. You just have to tell me it. I use my buddies as good buffers for when I'm being dumb. And he goes, if I think about it this way, there's only one name that was ever meant to be famous, and that's Jesus. And so what if you use this whole thing, all that you're doing for something far greater than yourself? If it's to tell the stories of others, if it's to tell the stories of the most vulnerable, if it's to tell the story of Jesus, what if you use this whole thing as something greater than yourself? So no matter if you became wildly famous or not, it was never about you. That nobody would ever look at it and go, this is about Ben and how great Ben is. And I don't know, out of dumb luck or humility or just knowing that I was never going to be that cool, I listened to him. And it's funny, man, I have a very similar desire in my life that I did 7 years ago, way before The Bachelor. Like, I still want to love others well. I still want to be a helping piece of society, not a hurting piece. I want to be curious, and I want to learn and listen. I want to be a part of stories being told. I have all those desires the same today. What's interesting is I go on a reality television show, and now people actually want to listen to me.
Right.
And now my voice matters a little bit more. And so the more my voice mattered, but the more I pointed towards something greater than all of us, the more my life started to be less overwhelming and started to be less selfish and just more focused on a mission far greater than anything I can do. And hopefully something that will go on far greater, longer than I'm alive. That's been cool. And so I can't say I've handled it perfectly. I don't know if anybody could, but what I can say is the only reason I could say I've handled it well is because this was never about me. And I hope it never is.
Well, one of the cool things too, when you're on a platform like that and a stage like that, is you get to meet a lot of cool people. And I was reading through your book and I was reading about the story of Annie. And I know that she had a big impact on your life. Can you just tell us about Annie and how much she meant to you?
Yeah, definitely. Well, later on in the book, I talk about my fear of death. And I still have a wild fear of death, and death doesn't make sense to me. And we don't have to go into that, but I do. Yeah. So I met a young lady through Instagram DMs who had cystic fibrosis, and she was in her early 20s, and her name's Annie. And she wanted a video. She was a fan of the show, so she wanted a video from me, just like wishing her the best or something. And I did it. And then I was like, that just doesn't feel right. Feels like there needs to be more done here. And so I reached back out to her and said, hey, can we talk? She said, yeah. So we started texting back and forth. And I started texting with Annie. And she allowed me the space to ask questions that I really wanted to ask her. And it was a lot about death. So Annie had cystic fibrosis. She was up for a third lung transplant that she was denied for. At this point in time, she knew she had about 2 to 3 weeks left of life before she suffocated and was no longer to be with us. And so I was able to ask her, like, what is it like knowing that you're young, that you have value still, that you love the people you're around and the life that you've lived, but yet it's going away from you? Like, what does that feel like? She shared some wisdom with me that I'll let people in the book read, but some wisdom with me that will sit with me forever. And I had to write about her because it's changed my life, is to have the opportunity to talk to somebody so wise, so young, so full of life, yet life was ending and she knew it was ending, is a unique opportunity, but also a very, I don't want to say humbling opportunity. I guess it put me in a place where I was fearful, but joy-filled and very grateful. Fearful of the idea that my friend at this point and that myself, our lives are fleeting and could end at any second, any time. So fearful of just what that meant, but also grateful that I was able to even be here at all. And then also excited with the fact that I can start to share that message with others, is that this life does have value, but it's not promised forever. In fact, it's not going to last forever. We're all, maybe the one thing that connects us the most is not only our shared pains and our shared sufferings, but the fact that we're all going to die. Yeah. And when you confront that, what does that look like? And so Annie shares some wisdom with me that has blown my mind.
Yeah, and he's pretty awesome. I'm glad you didn't give it all away because I do want people to get the book Alone in Plain Sight. It's available February 2nd, 2021. Ben Higgins is our guest. Last few couple questions here I want to ask you. On the cover, it says the lead of ABC's The Bachelor, which is like the big, headline to get people to read it. But then it says co-founder of Generosity Coffee. And I also looked it up. It's Generous International, I believe is the company. Can you tell us about Generosity Coffee and Generous International and where the mindset was in starting that?
Definitely. Yeah. So 10 years ago, my buddies and I started working on a nonprofit called Humanity and Hope United. Humanity and Hope United is a nonprofit that's focused on developing partnerships with communities that are impoverished and building up some type of sustainable change model with them. And it's working really well, and people are getting clean water and, all the things that you can think of when you think of places that have been struck by some injustice and just ways to help alleviate them. So this is working. But what happened on the show was our fundraising skyrocketed because I was on the show and I was talking about it and I was promoting it and people were donating to it and they're excited to join on. Well, we knew at that time right away, hey, this isn't going to last forever. That I'm not always going to be the Bachelor, right? That I'm not always going to have a platform. So how do we use what we're doing now to sustainably support and fundraise for our nonprofit? So we started a company called Generous International, and Generous International sells mostly coffee. We sell apparel and like coffee mugs and stuff like that. What we wanted to do is start a company that sources sustainable and environmentally friendly products, mostly coffee, sell that online, and then donate 100% of our profits to nonprofits and social causes that are fighting human-facing injustice around the world. So this is a passion project. It is something I don't take a salary from, I don't get paid from, but it's something that, again, is something I believe in, is to sell a bunch of coffee. It's specialty grade coffee, so you're not sacrificing quality, and then donate the profits to nonprofits and just be that fundraising engine behind the scenes that can help these organizations focus on what they're passionate about and what they care about, and not so much about raising their own salaries. So we're about 3.5 years in now. We're still online at generouscoffee.com. It's been a really cool thing to see. And we've been a part of building homes. We've been a part of helping build schools. We've been a part right now, one of the countries we work in is Honduras. Our communities were struck twice with a hurricane just over a month ago, back to back, like within 3 days. And so Generous has had a big part in helping redevelop and get people back on their feet. It's just awesome, man. Yeah. It's cool. I can do what I love, which is business. I like coffee too. I wasn't a coffee expert before time, but then I also get to work, and our team gets to work on projects that are focused on caring about people that we love as well.
That's cool. Generouscoffee.com, you said, is the website, right?
Yeah,
that's awesome. People need to go check that out. Generouscoffee.com. And again, Ben's new book, Alone in Plain Sight, is available February 2nd. This has been a great conversation, man. I really appreciate you joining us. The last question I have, we ask this to all of our guests. 2020 has been a crazy year, and we've said goodbye to 2020, and now we're into 2021, and you have a new book coming out, and there's so much to look forward to. But what was the great lesson that the Lord showed you, that he taught you when you look back to 2020? What was the great lesson when you tell your grandkids someday about 2020 that God showed you?
Yeah, it's weird. I probably want to say that everything on this earth can be taken away in a second. And that does two things, right? One, it does makes you super grateful for the things you have now. It also keeps you present in the moment that you're at now. So it makes you present in the moments of conversation with friends, with family, and relationships and loved ones. So it slowed me down. COVID slowed me down a lot. 2020 slowed me down a lot. But it's also made me incredibly grateful for the opportunities I've been able to be a part of in my life. And because I've seen it. I own a couple restaurants here in Denver. Restaurants have struggled. We had to shut down one coffee shop that Generous had because of COVID. I've seen these things that made me kind of fat and happy be slipped through my fingertips without control of them, without anything to really do about them. And so I'm just grateful. And that feels very cheesy to even say. I guess I'm thankful. I'm appreciative, but also humbled by the fact that, a lot of people are hurting. And that's still the focus of what I want my life to be about. That's what I want this book to be about, is about going out there and helping the people that are hurting due to COVID or whatever their life circumstances.
Yeah. He is Ben Higgins. Ben, thanks, man. This has been a great conversation. Appreciate you joining us here on the show. Wish you nothing but the best with the book and everything else you got going forward with Generous Coffee. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
And many thanks to Ben Higgins for joining us here on the show. He's got a brand new book out. Again, it's called Alone in Plain Sight, Searching for Connection When You're Seen But Not Known, releasing everywhere February 2nd, 2021 from our friends at Thomas Nelson. Ben Higgins. Did you guys remember Ben Higgins from season 20 of ABC's hit series, The Bachelor? I'm sure there'll be a lot of people who listen to this and remember him from that time. But I love what he's doing now, being an author and just encouraging people, sharing his story and letting people know that they are not alone, that there is connection available when you're seen but not known. Ben Higgins, we thank Ben for joining us here on Sports Spectrum. We also thank our partners and our sponsors, Compassion International. You can join them right now with pro athletes to help fill the stadium for 70,000 kids who are in desperate need of help because of COVID-19. Check out fillthestadium.com to give now. Fillthestadium.com. And then our friends at Water Mission, check them out at watermission.org, fighting the global water crisis and the spread of COVID-19 with urgently needed safe water, sanitation, and hygiene solutions. Check them out and donate over there. Please help them at watermission.org. We also want to encourage you to check out our website, sportspectrum.com. That's our home base. And then, of course, subscribe to this podcast if you're listening on whatever podcast app you're listening on right now. Clicking subscribe just means you will never miss an episode. And we're dropping 3 to 4 a week. So it's a great way to stay connected with our show, Sports Spectrum's podcast. And, of course, our Sports Spectrum podcast network of shows. You should be subscribing to all of them between Recalibrated, Table 40, the Football Sunday podcast, and this show, the Sports Spectrum podcast. We love you guys. We're so glad that you support us. So glad that you tune in. And we'll see you next time right here on Sports Spectrum. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.